Hello and welcome to the Herondale Boy Support Group. I'm Melanie,
I'm Ginny.
I'm Allie.
and we're here to help. Welcome back. It's been a minute,
It
but
has
we're
been
here.
a minute. A
Yeah,
minute and a half,
just
even.
just one or two. Yeah.
It's
Just
fine.
one.
Adulthood, you know?
Adulthood. I mean, the books are still there, you know.
The books
The
will
Gotta
books
be
have
go
been
going
out
there.
anywhere.
since like 2000 and whatever. If you're waiting on our hot takes, then maybe you should have been here earlier.
Maybe.
If our opinion is that
Yeah.
important to us, one, I'm flattered, but two, maybe it shouldn't be.
Yeah. We're just out here doing our best, you know.
Exactly.
We're
This is not new content, guys.
Mm-mm.
If you're waiting to hear how the
nah.
story ends.
Not new content for any of us, at least not with this series.
Not with this series. Next series will be some new content, but that is for later.
So,
Let's talk about what we've been up to. It's been a long time.
yeah.
It's been a long time.
Time
Yep.
without you, my
Yep.
friend. Is that what you're going
There's a
for?
lot of things that
There's so
there's a
many
lot and like
things
all
that
of
do
them
that.
hit my brain at once, so I couldn't finish the
Well, that's where my
the
mind went.
reference. Yeah.
I'm usually the one that comes up with the song references.
Yeah, I had at least two just like boom, and I was like
You're like, wait,
blah.
which is the
So
actual?
yeah,
Um, I've been here. I just been working at home. You guys, you guys had more stuff going on.
We did have more stuff going on.
yeah, I guess so. How long ago did we meet?
It was pre-con because
Yeah, that's why we
Well,
had to
yeah,
skip
I
a
know
couple
that
weeks.
part. We met right before Halloween, so
Yeah,
we
we
had
no,
that's
we
right.
Halloween.
That
literally
was the
had
last one.
our last one was the Halloween stream.
Yeah, so we had Halloween. We did Halloween. Good time. We handed out candy to the children.
We did. We were one of like
Um,
two houses on our street that were handing out candy, and I was like,
it's kind of sad.
it was really
Yeah,
I
sad. So
worked
we
on
live in a very
Halloween.
walkable neighborhood.
we do.
Yeah, I worked on Halloween, so I didn't get to hand out any candy.
Oh,
But did you hand out snacks to the pets? Little little snacks,
thanks.
little treats.
Not really. There were
Oh,
little
No,
I mean,
sad.
there's a jar of treats, but like I didn't give them any treats.
that's unfortunate. You should get on that.
What?
The
What?
audacity. That is your most
Not every
important
pet
job.
likes a treat.
I mean, yeah,
I
there's
mean,
that.
yeah, that's fair. These dogs are the first ones I've had that actually like the crunchy biscuits. You know. Usually, I've had ones that like the softer ones better, but these guys will eat everything, including collard greens. So, there's
Oh,
that.
oh no, Cleo. I
Ginny,
didn't feed
Ginny
Cleo.
has been a
Oops.
busy bee though.
Didn't feed the tortoise. That's fine.
The tortoise is gonna eat us out of house and home. It's fine.
Oh
She's
The
no.
going to be
tortoise might
very
break
upset
out
when we're
and
done
crash
with
the
this.
scream, or the stream,
Yeah,
and we will
right.
scream. But
Ew, wow.
so beware of that.
Beware.
Speaking
Oh
of
no.
screaming, Ginny had quite the busy week, or a couple of weeks,
Yeah,
where
yeah, I did.
you went to a con.
I did go to a con. It was a great time. There were so many people there, so many cool guests. I got to relive my childhood,
Yes.
actual childhood with Blue's Clues, and then current childhood reborn with Bluey. Um, the blue
Bluey.
dogs, man, the blue dogs. We love blue dogs here. So yeah,
And then
yeah,
also,
this Steve from Blue's Clues, and then the
yeah,
boys for Chilean Bandit were there, which is really exciting. And there were just a lot of cool people there. So if you're into nerd culture at all, conventions, yeah, good
that's where
times.
it's at. One day, I hope Ginny will work a convention that I can go to.
That'd be fun. That'd
It
be
would.
fun.
Would be fun.
But I came
Ginny,
back with it from the I came back from it with the Rona, so that
and
took
then
me
you
out for
gave it
like
to Allie.
a solid a solid week, and then turned into 2 weeks,
Well, the
and
thing is, when you
I'm
travel,
still
right?
sniffling.
There's an expectation that you're probably gonna get like a little sick, like a little cold,
Yeah.
especially when you're like working a convention. You interact with so many people. Like, there's
Mm.
the expectation of the con crud, where you're just gonna get the sniffles for a week. And I'm like, I have a shit immune system, so if somebody gets sick around me, 80% of the time I'm going to get it too. But I was like, okay, con crud, I can get that, and I'll be fine with that. So we weren't like isolating or anything, and we weren't like masking up in the house. And then Ginny, bless Ginny. So when I'm sick, I'm dead to the world. I'm a pathetic little baby. I am really annoying, and like I am dying. Like I'm terrible sick. Ginny is over there
Tell me
literally dying at her computer like, I'm fine.
Tell me
Nothing's
why that
wrong.
tracks for the two of you. That makes so much sense.
But it's funny because I come in, I walk, and then one day, like we're like 4 or 5 days into this at this point, I walk in and Ginny's laying down on the couch, which is not normal Ginny behavior. And I was just like, you good?
I was like, I'm fine. I'm
Are
fine.
you two
I did
ever
the
good?
dishes and I'm exhausted now, but just give me a few minutes and I'll get back up and I'll be okay.
And I was like, okay. And then later she makes a comment about not being able to taste anything, and I was like, Ginny?
Oh, Ginny.
And this is the exact morning that I had woken up with a scratchy throat and complained to Ginny about it. And then Ginny goes over and tests, and she's like, I have the Rona.
I give you sick, and I raise you COVID.
Yeah.
But on the bright side, we didn't have to isolate
yeah.
from each other at that point.
Right. Allie already had it, and then we were like, you know, Allie is gonna get it because Allie gets everything, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's fine. So I
another
mean,
exciting-
and I was grateful for Allie being like, "Go test," because I would have just gone on my life as normal.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
supposed to go out of town again for like that, then like the next day. So
Mm.
yeah,
You would have had a bad time.
and I would have had a bad time, and I just would have been like, "It's fine. I'm dying a little
At
bit, but I'm
least
okay."
you and Allie
You
had
know?
each other.
We did
Exactly.
have each other, and we have a 10-foot blanket now
We do now have a 10-foot blanket.
on the couch.
My
It's
parents,
amazing.
my mother loves giving gifts, and therefore she loves Christmas. So she's already finished her holiday shopping by the end of October. Like, it's all done. If you didn't tell her what you wanted by like September, you're not getting it. 'Cause she's already decided what you wanted and what you're getting. So I submitted my list early, and then she sent us a box full of part 1 of some of the Christmas things. Like, I got an advent
they
calendar
went on
of
a
dice.
cruise, too. Oh, right.
What cruise? Oh yeah, and like stuff from the
I
cruise.
said they went on. I thought it was because they went on a cruise and they had to send you stuff, and they were like, "Oh, let's just send this thing too."
Pretty much. My mom's like, efficiency, we'll send all this. So got like an advent calendar, and then she sent part of Christmas, which was a 10-foot blanket. It was great.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of gifts.
So it could fit all of us and the dogs, and yeah,
Family
everybody has blanket. Family blanket.
Speaking of gifts as well.
Gifts.
Ginny had a birthday.
Oh
Ginny's
yeah, I
old.
did. That's the thing I did. I am old. I am now,
You're welcome.
yeah, old.
Let it be recorded that I did not call Ginny old. I am not mean.
It has been. I've been calling Ginny old for a while. You see, I really bank on that
For
whole
many
2 years
years.
apart. So.
Does that mean I get to call you old, Allie?
No, because Ginny is older and also in the trio. Therefore, it would
You
be
are,
inaccurate.
but you are also older. Therefore, you are old.
Oh no.
upset.
Oh no.
You want to play that game? Because I totally can.
So Melanie is no
As
longer
the
part of this
baby.
podcast. Melanie, who
As the
are
baby in this
you not?
podcast. I say as the baby, as I'm literally just a year younger than Allie.
Yeah.
Had a birthday, had a Thanksgiving, had lots of food.
I mean, that too.
Yes. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
If you celebrate it, if you don't, happy November.
Happy
November.
whatever Thursday
Happy
of November.
holidays. It's like that car dealership sign with the happy holidays balloon.
It wasn't even a car dealership. Oh my god. So we have this.
Oh, okay.
It's a liquor store.
Oh, yes.
So it used to be even better. It used to be a pharmacy, and now it is a liquor store.
Okay.
But outside of it, they had a balloon that's red, like just like those inflatable balloons that you put up for sales, and it just said holiday sale.
Yes. And the colors are red, white, and blue. They're not color themes. So it's
they're
just
just
holidays.
America.
We're getting all the holidays. You want Flag
What is this?
Day?
4th of I have a
want-
feeling it was. Why do I have a feeling that it was left over from the 4th of July, and they were just like, we need to
It could
use
have
this
been.
again.
Exactly. Yeah. We were just driving around, and it's funny, just like you notice things driving around sometimes that you don't always notice.
Yeah.
So we're just driving around, and Allie's like, holidays. I bet they use that balloon every
Listen.
single holiday they want. Yeah.
It's not even Black Friday anymore. It's like Black November.
That's true.
Oh, that's true. Which actually, as an online shopper who doesn't like going to the stores, I don't really mind that
I don't
personally.
mind that either. Yeah, that's fine.
It's not that I mind it. It's just like, it's not a Black Friday sale anymore if it's not just for Black Friday.
I mean, I also appreciate
that's
that
true.
people aren't opening stores at like 2 a.m. anymore.
Oh,
Like,
agreed.
I'm glad that that's
Exactly.
ended.
I'm like,
I also
I'm
am
good with
glad. I
that.
don't think they're also opening them at like 8 p.m. the night before anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
As someone who
I
worked
just-
retail, I don't think I ever worked any Black Friday shifts though, because we always had a football
I
game.
did.
Ooh,
Many.
ouch.
That was fun.
Nah.
I actually went there yesterday. And I was just like, yeah, it's a great time for me not having to work this right now.
Nice.
Nice.
And my friends
Yesterday
were
we
like,
went to
Take advantage of the
Gatorland.
sales, and then that's
yeah,
it.
Gatorland. And you learned
Gatorland.
some very important information.
Yeah, that's how we
It's
celebrated
cool.
Black Friday. And Jenny's birthday.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted a true Florida birthday. See some gators, but we got to do a lot of cool things together. We fed so many things. We fed gators.
Everything.
Wow.
And not just the gator
We
chow, because they give you like pellet gator chow that you can like throw at the gators as a thing. But no, you can also go like behind the fence to the breeding marsh where the big boys are, and you can throw a raw chicken drumstick at them and feed them that way.
yes, we tried our best to get Raoul, who they named after Phantom of the Opera, because his face, he's missing like part of his face, so that's why they said they named him.
But then shouldn't his name be Eric?
Yeah, but
It
they
should
don't.
be,
They're
but
normies, you know.
they're normies.
They did their best. They did their best.
We just thought it was funny.
Don't.
Yeah, it was just funny because.
Oh, I
yeah,
love the
gators,
idea of that. I absolutely do. You guys know me. I wanted to name
Exactly.
every stream after Phantom of the Opera.
Yep.
Anyway.
I think. Oh, I was just saying, or we were saying, because it's cool because they like recognize their names, you know.
Mm-hmm. Gators are really smart, actually.
So yeah, and so we just heard in the distance, as like in the morning, this guy was just like Raoul like 3 times because Raoul apparently was not coming to the shore.
And so we were just sitting there. This was before we realized that we could also go back and feed them at a different time.
Yeah.
So we were just across it's the breeding marsh where we were. So we were on like the lookout. And they're just like, Raoul! And we were like, God, Raoul, get your shit together. So when we
That
went
could be
back
said
there,
for Phantom of the Opera, Raoul, but you know,
be
this is
said.
not a musicals podcast. This is a Shadowhunters podcast.
Right now it's a Gatorland podcast. But we went and we went behind. We were like, we heard somebody just yelling at Raoul earlier today. And he was like, oh, Raoul! And he came up and we could kind of sort of see him through. He was hanging out by like the trees and leaves and whatnot. But
yeah, it was fun though. And we fed giant tortoises. Yep, we fed giant tortoises. Giant, like the biggest ones. That
an Aldabra and a Galapagos.
Yes, so really, really big. The Aldabra was 120 years old.
104.
Wow.
Huh?
104,
I
think.
just
Okay, well,
Old.
I said 120, but old. Old. And and we fed capybara. That was exciting too. And
They've got fat butts.
goats. Yes.
It's very cute.
You can't keep doing this to me.
I saw something I had an observation. They have fat butts. What else do you want me
They've
to
got
say?
big butts, and we cannot lie.
Exactly.
So it was a good time at Gatorland overall, for sure. Good times.
Good times. If you make your way out to Florida and you want the authentic Florida experience, you need to get your butt to Gatorland. That is the truth.
Is that where you're
Fat or
going to drag
not-
me to whenever
fat
I
or
come to
not fat.
visit?
If you've not been, then yes, we're going to Gatorland.
Yeah, we can do
When
that.
would I have ever been?
You used to work at Disney for a hot minute. Maybe you
I
took
have
a
never
Saturday
heard
and
of
went to
Gatorland
Gatorland.
before.
Bruh.
I said
Then
it.
we are taking you to Gatorland. And we're going to make you hold the alligator.
Oh,
and the
fuck
snake.
no. Absolutely
And
not.
We'll make you do the one where you have to like sit on the gator and like
Absolutely
hold
not.
Their, hold their snout.
Absolutely not.
And then
I
we'll
will
go behind the
cancel my
things and
trip
we'll
before you
throw
make me do that.
drumsticks
I
at
would
the large
absolutely
gators.
cancel the trip before you made me do that.
Whatever,
Absolutely
you're
not.
Fine. Like, but there was so many tourists.
And
So
meet
many
Raoul.
tourists. You could
Yeah.
meet Raoul.
Okay, but I'm not
Raoul.
sitting on him or feeding
Not
them
Raoul.
or
Raoul's
holding
too
them.
big. Raoul's too
Yeah,
big.
you can't sit
You'll
on
hold
Raoul.
a little baby
I'm
gator.
not. I'm not holding any gators or snakes.
Well, if you're coming to our house, you might have to interact with snakes. There are several of them in this house.
Doesn't mean, yeah, just because they're there doesn't mean I'd have to interact with them. Remind me
yeah.
not to come visit you.
Anyway.
But then you would never see the Cordy.
But then, yeah, exactly. You'd never see the Cordy.
Why are we leaving Milo out of this equation as if I don't love him?
Or Milo.
You do, but you're the Cordy stan.
But you're the Cordy stan.
I'm also the Milo stan. Have you met me?
Why can't you love all of
There's
our
a
pets
difference.
equally?
There's a
Just like
difference,
we
but
definitely
yeah.
do.
Because 2 of them are much cuter than the others.
False. Anyway, this is a Shadowhunters
Should we get this
podcast.
started? Should we
Yeah,
discuss
I don't have any.
this
I don't have any
burning
good
topic?
segues about. Yeah.
No good segues. Is
I don't
there
have
an
any good
alligator?
segues
Do
about,
alligators live in London?
They might. I have no idea.
We saw
think-
ducks in the capybara pen. And a goose. It was
And
funny because
ducks.
there were 2 ducks and 1 goose, so it was duck, duck, goose. But Will Herondale hates ducks, and there's our
Ducks
segue.
are
Will hates
mentioned.
ducks.
Ducks are mentioned in this chunk of chapters.
They are.
They are mentioned. There is a moment of, yeah, ducks.
Where do we
A
begin?
couple times. A couple moments of ducks. There's a lot to cover here. It's funny because I had the summary this week, right? So yeah, this is your spoiler warning too. We're about to discuss chapters 19 through the epilogue, through the end of this book, whatever have you, of Clockwork Princess. So that's our spoiler warning. If you haven't read these chapters for some reason, if you were waiting on us to tell you about these chapters, here we are. We're doing it now. But if you've read them on your own, cool. If you haven't read them, take a pause, read them, whatever you will.
Or don't, and just hang out.
Yeah, or just hang out. Vibes. That's what we're here for. We're here for good vibes, good times. And then some not good times, apparently, and in the end of this book too.
Yeah.
Right. So we started out with chapter 19. And then we have basically this whole thing wraps up, right? So we've got Will climbing up into the rocky cavern of Care Idris, and finally he finds Tessa. So was it our last section? We talked about how he was just in the inn's warm brand mash the whole time. So finally we made it. We have finally made it. We found Tessa. Good job. All right. So they share this heartfelt reunion, and then Will reveals that he came alone and that Jem is not going to find them because Jem is dead. So yeah, that's great. Tessa grieves, and they spend hours. Then Will and Tessa just spend hours like apologizing for each other's loss and feeling sorry, and then telling each other not to be sorry about Jem's death and his decisions to live faster and to burn brighter. Um, and they've both kind of resigned themselves to like no salvation after this, to a fate where they're not going to make it out of this cave. And so upon that, yeah, they spend what they believe is their last night in each other's arms, exchanging passionate words and actions, as Ali has so graciously illustrated for us here. And then yeah, after waking up next to him, Tessa realizes that he's got like an imprint of a pale shape of a star on his shoulder from her angel. So that's fun. Yeah. We'll talk about their Stevie night a little bit together too. We had it with Jem, and then now we've got it with Will. So great times. And at the Institute, we've got the rest of the Shadows preparing to use Henry Agnagus's portal to travel over to Care Idris, even though they know that backup hasn't come yet. So well, it almost hasn't come because, just before Cecily pictures their destination, Silent Brothers, brother Enoch, Micah, and Zachariah appear and offer their aid. So Cecily not only imagines their destination, but is the first to step through this portal, Gabriel following closely behind. And then we cut to the council room where it's full of shouting, and Consul Wayland and the Inquisitor are attempting to bring order to this meeting, of which each institute around the world has sent their representation, and they're debating over Charlotte's message of warning on this attack of London. They're like, is it true? Is it not true? Everyone is in uproar, and this includes one Tatiana Blackthorn, née Lightwood. She speaks out against Charlotte and Will's words, saying that they are the reason that her husband is dead, to which the Inquisitor responds, it was Benedict's fault, actually. Uh, Yeah. And Consul Wayland tries to take control of the situation, claiming that they have to have a replacement for Charlotte as the head of the London Institute, even as the Inquisitor protests this course of action and says that they should discuss sending reinforcements after her. Then he's interrupted by an automaton slicing through Consul Wayland's head, slicing his head from his body, and then the chamber is just flooded with clockwork creatures. It's a terrible time. Then we have Magnus, the cockblock Bane, coming in. He's rather amused to find Will and Tessa in bed together. Yeah, strikes again. He breaks Mortmain's invisible wall, just like boop, no problem there. Tells them, get up, get dressed. Come on, we're doing this, guys. And they're like, oh, yeah. We're getting dressed. Uh-huh. So they scramble to do so, not before sharing a kiss and some flirtatious banter before rushing to join the others. Sophie and Cecily are joined by all but Magnus and Cyril in this large room filled with rows of automatons, this dormant clockwork army. And as Henry reaches for the Pyxis inside of one's chest, it activates and tosses him to the side with this sickening crack, and Charlotte rushes to his side, also being tossed aside, and then Brother Micah, our third shadow silent brother, is just like killed. So there's that. And then if I had a nickel for every time Will was just like Cecily in a vague and ominous urgent context, I would have more than 2 nickels, right? But anyways, Tessa and Will finally get to the others and enough time to tell them that like the Seraph Blades are useless against these creatures, and just in enough time to see that silent brother Zechariah is revealed to be Jem. Jem, my Jem, who is not dead, but fighting alongside them. Wow. Right. Tessa gets held by Moros, the demon who is now a clockwork, demon, whatever. And then Henry does come to, though, with the help of Magnus, and they make a plan to retreat because this is just too overwhelming. There's too many of them. They can't do it. And then this plan is interrupted by Mortmain, of course. He comes in with his whole villain spiel. And then Tessa tries to bargain with him one last time, but he's not having it. Honestly, kind of reasonably so. He's given her the benefit of the doubt a couple times, not gone well. So he's like, no, I'm not doing that, not doing that. But Tessa decides to reach inside of her clockwork angel pendant and just change into the angel that she has seen in her dream previously. So with the terrifying power and glory of Ithuriel the angel, she strikes Mortmain down and the battle is over, and she falls unconscious again. Yep. So the Shadowhunters back at the Institute are worried for Tessa, of course, not knowing when she will wake up, but Gabriel is a little more concerned about Cecily returning to Wales. She reveals that she intends to be a Shadowhunter still and remain at the Institute, and Gabriel kisses her, the first of many to come in the years to come. Ooh. Inquisitor Whitelot visits the Institute to offer Charlotte the position of consul, now that they obviously don't have one, thanks to Wayland's, slicing thing happening. Um, and at first, Charlotte's hesitant to accept, but after discussing with Sophie, it turns out that she will accept upon a few conditions. After several visits to Tessa's sickbed, Will asks Charlotte to summon Jem, who is now Brother Zechariah, as he believes that seeing him again will provide the closure that Tessa needs to bring her back from this delirium that she's in which she's been calling out for Jem, and she's just flowing in and out of delirium here. So of course Charlotte manages to do that, and Jem returns and takes up a whole chapter trying to explain why he became a silent brother after everyone had been led to believe he was dead. And this chapter ends his story as a shadow hunter, granting blessing for Wessa, and Jem saying his last goodbyes to Tessa and Will separately, at least for now, you know. And then we finally have chapter 24, which is the last formal chapter of the story. And it basically just ties up a lot of loose ends here. It picks up sometime later, starting with Sophie's ascension ceremony to become a shadow hunter. And then leads into the Enclave's annual Christmas party. So this grand ballroom filled with merriment and finery, and there's no finer thing, right, than a name drop of Charlotte and Henry's baby to be, Charles Buford Fairchild. So we learn that Will has finally returned mostly to his normal self after losing Jem, as a result of Tessa's effort, though she did not understand why Will was taking her out to these places and acting like really distant and stuff. Will reveals that he was trying to court her properly. And then Tessa's like, we're beyond that, all right? Come on. And please just be yourself. Just be yourself. And he's like, oh,
Just
okay,
take
cool.
me.
Yeah, right. Basically.
He already did.
And
Ayo.
then we get to read that letter that Will wrote in the front of A Tale of Two Cities for Tessa. So we get to read that. The one that right after his curse he had not been real once he learns that. He wrote that inscription to her, but then he didn't give it to her because he found out he was engaged to Jem. So we finally get to read that as readers here. And then Jem's uncle Elias Carstairs shows up at the Institute bearing a legendary sword named Cortana that he was meant to give Jem on his 18th birthday, but obviously he will not be doing that. So he tries to give it to Will, his parabatai, but Will not accept it. He refuses. And he's like, Jem's not dead. I'm not doing this. Nope. And he just like nopes out and leaves the room. And Tessa is like, maybe you should keep it then, Elias. Keep it and give it to your own heirs because Will's not going to take it. So Will, he rushed out into the cold and he meets Jessamine. Well, the ghost of Jessamine, who is just hanging out, apparently she did not pass on, but instead she's been charged with watching over the Institute as long as it needs guarding, since she did not want to be a shadow hunter in her life. So Will apologizes to Jessamine and she chastises him for his attempts at romance. Doing a bad job here, buddy. And Magnus also comes to say goodbye before he leaves from London to go to New York with Church the Cat. And Will thanks him, the first shadow hunter who has thanked Magnus Bane. Though we certainly haven't seen the last of Magnus, and he knows it too. On that balcony, Tessa finds Will. They talk about their future and if Tessa wishes she was a shadow hunter. And Tessa decides that she is content being a warlock of sorts. As long as she's part shadow hunter and she can live with their found family here at the Institute, that's good enough for her. And then Will offers to make her part of his permanent family, with a passionate proposal here. So Tessa, of course, accepts. And Charlotte bends the rules right at the end here and lets Will and Cecily visit their parents at home using the portal technology to introduce them to their significant others for the holidays, as you do, right? So that's how that story ends. Or does it? Because we have an epilogue. Wow. Okay.
Ah!
So this epilogue is in 2008. So it is many, many years in the future. So 2008, Tessa is going to meet Jem at Blackfriars Bridge for their annual meeting. She reflects on her life married to Will until his death. Will died in 1937, surrounded by his family and his loved ones, a life that Will and Tessa built together. And Jem, brother Zechariah, was the last to see him off, uh, sent him off with music from his violin, playing his life as he observed it. So we learn that Tessa left the Institute after Will's death, not being able to bear seeing her children grow older than her and pass. And she found some companionship in Magnus, also immortal here. Long lifespans, shared trauma. And then unexpectedly, Jem, who approaches the bridge this year, not as a silent brother, not as brother Zechariah, but as Jem himself, young and healthy and unbound from his previous ties. Jem explains it's another tale of Lightwoods and Herondales and Fairchilds for another time. And Tessa asks where he's going to go next, and Jem says it depends on her. So he doesn't feel like a shadow hunter without his parabatai, and he still does love Tessa, a century and a half later. He tries to ask of her feelings, but can't bring himself to do it, instead walking away, and Tessa chases after him and says what he could not, that she has always loved him and Will, both this entire time, and she could not have loved one without the other. They are both changed people at this point and have lived different lives over the years, but they've been granted this miracle to do it all again together. There we go.
I.
There you have it. That's a lot to digest.
We'll
That's
get
a
into
lot to
that.
get
But I
into.
think if you're watching on Twitch
So many
or
things.
after on YouTube, you can kind
The
of tell
facial
how we feel.
expressions can
So
say me reading I wasn't able to see, but looking up still, I'm like once in a while I'm like, yeah, I see it. I see it, guys.
starting with levity, we know where they go after the bridge. They go to the floor of Tessa's flat in London, and they do the do. There's a short story by Cassie Clare called After the Bridge that tells us about that, and it's steamy. But beyond that, so the title of the stream is Gem Ex Machina, and we sort of had a little discussion about this prior to the stream. A Deus Ex Machina means God from machine, which is basically just like something happens that seems like spontaneous and out of place just to like solve something that is supposedly unsolvable. And as we were going through the summary, I counted 8 of them.
We had talked
So
a
you,
little
like,
bit
write-
before we started
I think you're
about.
tallying.
I started taking notes over the summary and just making tallies of what they were. So,
What do
first
we
one
want
I
to
got.
start with?
first one I got was Council Wayland, just our antagonist, who's like a dick to Charlotte all this time, just gets beheaded by an automaton. And just like
Beheaded.
an automaton shows up to Idris through these barriers. Which, like, we do have loose explanations of how that works or whatever. And then just, like, chops his head off and, like, that's that resolution.
Solves one problem.
Yeah, exactly. No other named Shadowhunters we know die in there. It's just,
Exactly,
it's
just
That's
just
not true. That's not true.
no.
Who else?
Who else
Starkweather.
dies?
Oh, Starkweather. Well, he
Okay.
was
We don't
old.
learn that
Doesn't
until
matter.
later, but
He
he
was
did
old.
die there.
He was gonna die in 5 years anyways. So
He was
We
gonna
don't learn
die
it
in 5
until we don't learn
minutes.
it until later, but it Starkweather did also die in that battle.
Okay.
okay.
Well, 2 named Shadowhunters.
2 named
Only
Shadowhunters, but
one of
neither of
which
them
is
are ones we care
Starkweather.
about, you know? Like yeah. They're both kind of terrible old men. Like, yeah.
Both terrible old men. And then we have Magnus the Cockblock Bane being the second.
Strikes again.
Yeah, he strikes again.
Oh yeah, I guess.
When he shows up, and then Will and Tessa are both in this barrier. That's like, oh,
Oh,
it's a
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Tessa's been stuck there forever. And then
Magnus just takes it down in
Will
2
just
seconds.
waltzes in,
Yep.
and then Will's just like, Magnus is like, boop, and then it's gone.
It's gone.
It's done. No, nothing. That is no longer a point of concern. No longer needed for the plot.
I attest that to how powerful Magnus is, but
And that's a fair interpretation. However, something that's caused this much strife,
oh, agreed. But yeah,
I'm still
Oh,
counting it
Magnus.
as a Deus Ex Magnus.
that's
But-
fine. Deus Ex Magnus?
Magnus
Yeah.
sometimes literally is the
Deus Ex Magnus
that,
just is
yeah.
the Deus Ex Machina.
for the Shadowhunters.
Number
For
3?
the Shadowhunters in
What would
general.
this be?
Yeah.
Next is number 3?
Yes, but to be fair, magic is often a Deus Ex Machina. Like, that
Yeah.
is a literary trope. A lot of times
feel like that's kind of
thing happens.
The
Yeah.
point of magic.
Not necessarily, because if you write magic well in Magic with Limits, it's different. But
Yeah.
that's kind of the thing. There's a series by Cindy Williams Chima, one of my favorites, or the first 3 anyway. The Air Chronicles in the Air series, the magic in that series is tied to like physical strength, which is a really interesting way to like have wizard's fatigue and like tie it to something tangible. So that way it is less of a Deus Ex Machina. But anyway, then Gem's existence. Gem Ex Machina. This is we'll spend a lot of the podcast talking about that, so I won't get into that one too much. And then number 4, we have Henry Ex Machina, or Deus Ex Magnus again, with Henry is down, Henry is struck, they can't feel his heartbeat, but Charlotte is insisting that he's alive, and Magnus is just like, oh, boop. I saved everything but his legs. But he's fine. Here he is.
There's only so much magic in you.
Exactly. And then we have Tessa, Ex Machina. Angel Tessa. Tessa, when she changes, we know her to get to the knowledge. But no, when she transforms into an angel, she gets the full powers.
She becomes an angel.
She becomes the angel.
And just smites Mortmain down. Just, yeah.
We're going to talk about that too.
Just smites him.
Yeah.
And then number 6, Charlotte has become the council, which means that Will and Cecily can go visit their parents because they don't have to worry about breaking the rules because Charlotte is in charge of the rules.
And Charlotte is mom, and she
Yeah.
wants them to be happy.
To be fair, I think that Charlotte becoming consul is a great ending for her, and I love that for her. But the fact that
I agree.
then this makes Will and Cecily no longer adherent to the Shadowhunter
to the
rules
rules.
where they can't talk to their mortal that's where the Deus Ex Machina is. Therefore, Cecily gets her closure, and she technically gets to bring Will home and all that fun stuff. So she sets out to do what she wanted to do, and she doesn't have to.
Her
She can
arc
get
is
their
full
blessing
circle.
to become Shadowhunter, whatever, blah blah blah. And another permission-based Deus Ex Machina, Jem comes to the institute.
Yep.
As Brother Zachariah to tell Will, it's okay, you banged my fiance. You can make an honest woman out of her if you'd like.
And he tells Tessa something similar.
Yep. Yeah.
What'd you say, Melanie? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Oh, I just said he tells Tessa something similar.
Exactly.
He does. Yeah.
Jim appears to give them
Just-
permission to bang, and then leaves.
And marry and yeah,
It's
be
not
in
even
love and all that
it's
stuff.
permission, but also like forgiveness. Though they did.
Yep.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
We all have thoughts. I know.
He's a silent brother and they're not supposed to be talking to him. But they're just like, well, we can invite him this once.
We will
This
all. I know we'll have a lot to say.
And then the final one that counted in the summary is Jem coming back as a real boy in 2008.
Oh, well, yeah.
What is this
like, what do we do?
Pinocchio
This is going to
stuff?
Exactly.
Ugh.
What is this shit? And like, we'll have to talk about it when we get there because we will see that happen on screen. And I remember thinking it was weird and kind of shoved in there when I was reading it on screen because I think it happens in the second trilogy of the Mortal Instruments. And I think just the general fuckery that's happening there, and like, oh, Brother Zachariah is cured now, is just kind of like thrown in there as a side effect of whatever fuckery. But don't quote me, I could be wrong. It's been a hot minute.
It's been a minute, but I do believe I
definitely
remember how it happened,
second trilogy.
and we'll talk about it when we get there.
Exactly. So some fuckery.
It's
but
definitely it's definitely the second trilogy because it was not in the first trilogy.
No, it's literally. I think it's the last book.
It is
literally
the
the last book.
Great. The last book, yeah.
Brother
I
Zachariah
read
being killed
4
is like a
of the
consequence
Mortal Instruments,
of what
and it
happens.
was not there.
It's
It's tied into all that.
Okay.
I don't know. We'll get. I don't want to say too much about it because it's not what we're talking about.
We'll get there. It's a whole lot.
Well, I can't wait to be mad about it then.
we will have plenty of time to be mad
Or
about it.
I don't know if I'm gonna be mad about it. We'll see.
Okay.
I will be mad about it. I will be mad about most things. That is one of my defining character traits.
You don't say.
Wow. Yeah. This book in general, we all knew it was probably our least favorite of the trilogy, I think.
I don't know if it's the book that's my least favorite, or as much as it's just the ending that leaves the bad taste in my mouth.
The thing is,
fair enough, I guess.
It's hard to watch like all these characters you love in this world that you love come to an end in such a way that just feels cheap. You know? I don't know. I have a lot of complex feelings.
I feel like we should discuss, the minor things before we get to the major.
Sure.
Because I feel like if we start talking about the ending now, we're not going to stop.
Yeah, I agree. So if you have minor things to bring them up.
I mean, my first thing that I immediately think of is something funny, and that when Will and Cicely go home and introduce their parents to their partners, Will introduces Gabriel as Mr. Lightworm.
Oh, that's great. I was like, ha, ha, ha.
And I was like, I am Cicely. Cicely's just like, Will! And I'm like, I am Cicely. I am Cicely in this moment.
I also enjoyed Cecily kissing Gabriel and then being like, yeah, that was a 5.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god, I wrote that too. I was like,
are you
damn, Cecily, not her rating him on a 5, but then the flirty banter being like, well, I'll be your tutor.
Okay, but who is Cecily kissing?
I was like,
who is she smooching in the backlands of Wales?
You are 15 years old. How much kissing have you really been doing? That you would be like,
we all know that's not the point. The point is that Cecily is headstrong and she's not.
I adore Cecily,
it is the
but
point,
in this moment, I think it's fucking hilarious.
It's hilarious, and I love it. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Myself and one Will Herondale very interested to learn who you're smooching.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, Cecily gets her, she gets her ending of getting to see her parents again and deciding to be a Shadowhunter, and then, getting together with Gabriel is like kind of her wrap up.
I mentioned this in a previous episode, but I just don't remember Cicely and Gabriel not being focused on this. Like, I feel like they thought they were more focused on than they actually are. I don't know if that makes sense.
I feel that. I feel like, the thing is, this book starts as a trio cast, and then the cast kind of expands in Clockwork Princess.
Which is fine.
Which is fine, but it's just,
there's a lot of characters, not a lot of room for all the characters.
Right.
And the thing about Cecily and Gabriel is that they're, they have strong personalities. So, we remember them as being sharp and, stubborn and these things.
when they're
maybe
in a
a
scene,
lot,
they're
even
in a
though
scene.
this, yeah,
I
and so
don't.
like despite them
Yeah,
only really being in here like
I
so
feel like I
much this
remember
last
them
book.
more individually than as a couple, but that's because they are more focused on individually than as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
And good for them. They deserve that.
Well, yeah, and that's a good thing. And I think that those characters are written really
Yeah.
strongly, so
Like, in
which is
contrast,
good.
if I think of Gideon and Sophie, I think of them as a couple rather than the individual people. Like, Sophie, I would think of more as an individual person, like, as a character than Gideon. But,
Gideon
like,
Yeah,
gets his
if I'm
yeah.
chance
thinking,
time
Sophie
kind of
has
in
more.
Clockwork Prince.
huh?
I think it's Clockwork Prince where we see Gideon the most as Gideon and not Gideon
Right.
and
Yeah,
Sophie.
I
We don't see a
agree.
lot of him this book.
And
No,
maybe that's
he's
why.
barely in it. Yeah.
But because, like, Sophie is there from the beginning, that, like,
Mm-hmm.
you were able to think more of her as a character.
Absolutely. We meet her as Tessa's friend first, you know? Like, she's
But, yeah,
Tessa's confidant for a while. So we get to
even
know her
so,
as
like I
Sophie.
said, I would still think of, if I think of them, I'm thinking of them as a couple, where I'm thinking of Cicely and Gabriel as more individuals.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I get
Yeah,
it.
it does.
Regardless,
Yeah.
I like the way that Cecily wraps up. I like her and Gabriel
Oh, I
together.
do, yeah.
I think
Yeah,
it's
oh, yeah,
hilarious
I
that
agree.
Gabriel is Will's foil, and then, yeah, dating sister, and it's a fun dynamic to play
While
with.
Gabriel has a strong personality, he gets the, like, shy, sort of, like, stereotypical soft boy when he's with Cicely.
He gets put in his place by her. He's intimidated by her in a way that's fascinating to him, and it's
Yeah.
cool.
It's good for him too. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
It is.
Herondales and Lightwoods are good for each other, you know?
Oh yeah.
You could say that. I also just wasn't, when I was looking just back at my notes just now, I'm jumping back to the very start of these chapters, but this is something that I know Allie will, I think, find funny. I said, if we could, I can only imagine the amount of times Tessa has said sorry since Will found her. I said, if only we could start charging her $1 for that, too.
Yes, this is based on the fact that Melanie apologizes too much, and I started charging her $1 for every time she apologizes to me for something
Except
stupid.
the last time you gave me $1.
I did give you $1, and now it's just hanging out in your Venmo bank, and that's our sorry $1 that we'll get passed back and
I have
forth.
yet to return, because I haven't said sorry.
And I'm so proud of you!
Okay.
But, yeah, it's a thing. But let's continue talking about, like, the minor wrap-ups. So we talked about Cecily and Gabriel.
Oh, yeah.
Let's elaborate a little bit on Sophie and Gideon. Sophie gets a really good ending. Sophie gets what she wants.
Does.
You know, ever since the beginning, we know that she looks at Shadowhunters, and, like, Charlotte in particular, with a sense of awe. She looks at their sense of freedom and the sense of independence that Shadowhunter women have, compared to, you know, the quote, modern-day woman of the time. And she envies that, and she wants that, but she doesn't see that as something that she can have.
Mm-mm.
You know, and then she meets Gideon, and she falls in love with him, and she wants him, but again, it's not something that she can have. And Sophie has been through a lot prior to the books, and, you know, at the end of here, she kind of gets to have her cake and eat it too. She ascends, she becomes a Shadowhunter, and, you know, her and Gideon are making it work. So she gets the handsome prince that young Sophie dreamed of, who's not tainted by the violence that that she had to face beforehand, and she gets to be a part of this community that she has grown to love and find power and independence in, and yeah.
It's funny that you said... Oh, go, Jenny. I've been talking a lot.
Oh, I was just saying that it's like, it's good too that, like, we see that moment where she is talking with Charlotte about her accepting the role of the console, right? So we get this really good moment with Sophie and Charlotte, finally,
Yes.
where, because somebody, I don't remember who it was, it might have been Will actually, who encouraged
No, I
Sophie to
think it
go.
was Gideon.
Okay, somebody encouraged Sophie to go talk to Charlotte because you're more than just her servant, you know, you're her friend, and she respects you, and you and there's that care. And Sophie's like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And then she goes,
Maybe
and she
it was
says
Will.
that. Yeah,
Right.
because there's this moment where Will and Sophie are like, Sophie's like, I'm sorry I judged you so harshly, and Will's like, nah, it's all good, you know. He's like, by the way, you should talk to Charlotte.
Gideon brought up ascending to Sophie first. That may
Yeah.
have been what you were thinking of, but that happened a while ago.
Maybe. I don't remember.
But it's really good because it's just nice for them because Charlotte and Sophie have been through so much together too. Like, they're Sophie is here at the Institute before Tessa comes along and all this stuff. So like they've been through so much and they've seen so much of each other's
of each other's growth, because Charlotte's still really young.
Yeah.
And like Sophie was obviously the young queen of the Institute, and they've grown. And with the way that Charlotte and Sophie are both so tied to the running of the Institute, they're arguably closer in a lot of ways than Sophie had been with others in the house prior to Tessa. Prior to Tessa, Charlotte was that confidant, you know?
I do think that Sophie, if anybody deserves to have their cake and eat it too, it's Sophie.
Oh, absolutely.
I agree.
100%. But the moment between her and Charlotte is sweet. And Ginny can continue, when Charlotte's talking about accepting the council, Charlotte mentions how she has several conditions upon which she'll accept the position. You know? And one of them is the fact that Sophie gets to ascend. Which is...
It's not explicitly stated, but it's pretty much implied. Another condition is that Will gets to be the one to run the Institute when she no longer can.
Will. Yep. Will gain to be in charge.
Which we will talk about Mr. Will Herondale.
Yeah.
But if we're continuing to talk about minor wrap-ups, we talked a little bit just now about Charlotte.
Yeah.
And her being the council. And it's just good that her and Henry, regardless of Henry now being paralyzed, they're happy. And they're going to have a child soon.
And Buford.
Charles Buford Fairchild.
Charles Buford Fairchild. We had to have the Fairchild name go down in history.
I was like, I literally was like, why? I quite literally wrote in my notes, I was like, why Fairchild and not Brownwell? That doesn't make any sense. And then they explain it in the next line, and I was like, oh.
Scratch that. Maybe I should read a little further. And I think, like, early in the series, they talk about how Henry's parents kind of suck, maybe? Like, the Branwells are kind of...
I think so.
Annoying.
Yeah.
There was this whole conflict about them being married because of money, and... Something about Charlotte's father betraying Henry's grandfather. There's something about their grandfathers. I don't remember, but there was this whole thing with their families.
Right. I agree. So that gives us that sense that like Henry isn't really tied to his last name. He doesn't care as that much, and now Charlotte's like
Charlotte.
Yeah, and then Charlotte's the consul now, and she's got this legacy basically now too, and
you know what Henry is? Henry's a my wife guy.
Henry is a my wife guy.
Henry is a wife guy.
Another minor wrap up: Magnus Bane.
Magnus Bane. First of all, I like that Henry and Magnus have like a bro TP going on here. I love it. It's so
fun.
good.
I love them.
Yeah, I love them.
But Magnus decides that there's nothing more for him in London, and he's going to go to New York.
He solved all the Shadowhunters' problems by conveniently being able to do
what, Magnus?
Now he's going to
leave. Yep.
I think,
Bye-bye.
And he's going to take church, which that's important because we love church and we want to know what happens to church because church is the most important, obviously. But Magnus, I have a feeling going to New York is gonna work out well for you.
It's gonna work out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why I think that, but I do.
Figure it out. Yeah.
Yep. Though we did see a glimpse that Magnus was also in Paris at some point, because Tessa runs into him there. After
Magnus
Will's
is
death.
In his gallivanting
world traveler era.
Exactly.
Magnus makes it around places. So we saw a little glimpse that Magnus was like in Paris at some point too. And I also like Magnus and Will's relationship too, and they have that moment on the balcony where they're talking. And Magnus is just like, nah, you didn't need my help. And Will's like, no, I did though. And like, it's just good. It's not a ship really, but it's something different.
It's another bro TP kind of.
It's like, it's not a bro TP, but I don't think it's like a full-on ship either for me, and like
it might be for Allie.
It's just special.
I can and will ship just about anything. Just because I can. It's a good relationship,
it is.
It's good, yeah.
It's almost like it's like a big brother, little brother kind of thing.
Close.
I don't see that.
Maybe.
It's not quite
Maybe.
like it's not like a father-son. It's not like a bro TP. So
it's a
maybe it's just hard to
that's it.
define.
Yeah. It's in another timeline they could have been.
In another timeline, they could have been a ship, but this wasn't it because Tessa exists, and yeah.
Is this where your note was gay?
What?
I don't think so.
Damn it.
506. I think that's a Will and Gem.
It's probably Will and Gem make
Probably.
sense too.
It probably is the Will and Gem.
Are there any other minor
It's definitely Will
wrap-ups
and Gem.
that we need to discuss?
Okay.
Jenny was
Before
walking me through her notes earlier today, and she was like, "This one just says
Yeah.
screaming. This one also says screaming. This one just says."
I have a
gay."
lot of those. I have a lot of those where I'm like screaming, cute, I love it.
Yeah.
But good for Magnus, and obviously we'll see more of him, plenty more of him, as
We will.
these books continue.
Magnus,
There are
the
many
one
more Shadowhunters
pillar
books.
that remains.
Many more Shadowhunter problems that need to be solved by Magnus Bane.
He's gonna get involved with Shadowhunters, that's for sure.
He's gonna get very intimately involved with Shadowhunters.
He's very involved.
Going to get to know some Shadowhunters particularly intimately well.
Okay. Anyway.
Well, yes, actually, yes.
Canonically
actually,
gay.
yes. Canonically.
No, canonically, Magnus is a freewheeling bisexual, and that is important because by erasure. However, it's funny just to be like gay. But anyway.
Yeah.
Minor wrap-ups. Who else we got?
I don't know. Do we have anybody else?
That might be it on the minor wrap-ups, actually. I was looking through my notes too. I was like, that's everybody, but yeah, the main trio, I think.
There's not much to say about Bridget and Cyril other than the fact that we assume they're still working there at the Institute.
We forgot about them in this book. It's fine.
Bridget kicks ass the whole time.
She's mentioned to be still singing her songs, and they're all like,
still singing her
"You've
songs.
gotta be kidding me!"
Yeah. She comes in with the songs about the plot, then you know.
There's one where Sophie is like, "Does it have to have Will's name in it?"
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I don't think there's any other like minor characters either that we have to worry about.
All right,
too.
let's talk about.
What are we talking about first?
The main three. Let's get into it.
Deep
the
breaths.
main three.
Should we talk about the good stuff first?
Sure. That is a short list.
Will and Tessa, as we sort of said in the summary, getting together.
Will and Tessa get together.
I mean, it's good for them.
Do get some Wessa.
I wrote a note.
Get some Wessa.
That is going to be more relevant when we get to Mortal Instruments. But it was, what is it with Cassie and writing couples being together for the first time in cave-like settings?
Nice.
And interrupted by Magnus Bane.
Like, that's a theme that goes on. I don't know if it happens in The Last Hours, but
I don't think so.
I think that's the first couple that Magnus doesn't interrupt in The Last Hours. I'm not sure.
But you know what? Each time, at least the two times that I'm thinking of, they both involve a Herondale.
Yeah. Well, Herondale's, again, one of the core families. That's not as exciting. Well, I guess...
No, it's funny. I was like, what is it with Cassie in this?
Anyway.
Yeah, what is it?
Will has some great lines these chapters.
He does.
Oh my gosh,
great, fantastic lines. Ginny, would you like to share your favorite?
I am catastrophically in love with you. Not me reading this in the airport and almost missing my flight because I was like, oh my goodness. Screaming, crying, missing my flight, all these things.
Ginny texted the both of us when she was reading it because she was on her way home. When you were on your way home from the con, right?
I was home, yeah.
And we were like, no, Ginny, don't miss your flight.
I was the last person on that plane, and they were like, oh, we were looking for you. I was like, ha ha ha, I'm here. Yeah, it's fine.
Like, I get it. Because if someone said that to me, I'd also probably melt right then and there.
That's fair.
It's so much. It's just the passion, the will of it all.
The intensity with which Herondale
the will
is just
both literally and figuratively.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. But the Herondale intensity, but like Will especially, it's so strong. Like, ugh.
I love him.
Will is just out here willing all over the place.
He's having all of the emotions all the time. He's like, I've been emotionally constipated for so many years, and now we're just letting it out.
Yep.
I think my favorite That one's really good. But I also, one that's gotten me every time is Life is a Book, and there are 1,000 chapters I've not yet read, and I wish to read them all with you. And I'm just like,
yeah,
screaming.
as the readers.
Where did I?
That one sobbing every time.
I wrote this down somewhere, but oh yeah. I like the line. He's like, "I will love you, and I will only ever love you until I die," and then Tessa cuts him off. But I'm just like, there's a reason I love that line, because it also echoes back or foreshadows something with future books. It feels like it runs in the Herondale family.
Herondales be like that.
Herondales do be like that, and it's just, yeah.
I will say,
I also
the characterization of each family is so consistent from book to book to book. Like, we see, like, these personality traits carry on. I think I mentioned in a previous podcast where I read these books first, and I read The Mortal Instruments, City Bones second, and, like, on page 30, I was reading what Jace was up to, and I was like, this is some Herondale bullshit. I was like, is Jace's last name Herondale? And that's not a review you get for hot
yeah. I also really like the line where he's like, "Of course you can have a Shadowhunter name. You can have my name," or whatever he says. And I'm just like,
I was like, oh wow.
I'm like, wow.
Yeah. I just quoted that, and I was like, you can take my last name. William. I was like,
William.
Wake me up, baby.
Will catastrophically in love with you. So Herondale strikes again. Ah, is what I said.
I didn't write down a lot of his lines, but like we all know they're good.
Oh,
and then there's
I
was gonna say Cecily says that. Never mind. It's a good Herondale line, but it's not from Will.
Well, Cecily is very much Herondale too.
She's like, everyone breaks the law, and that mischievous smile of hers. I love her.
Yep. Yeah, everyone does, and I oh, yeah. And that proposal, like, I don't know. You cannot tell me that this is anything like Gems, but it's fine.
Exactly.
I was like,
And that's where.
Oh, are we talking? Or
I think it's time.
I don't know. I was, yeah. I mean, to be fair, Will says his like heartbreaking lines to Gem too sometimes, and I wrote down one of them, and I was like, oh, yeah.
I wrote down like if we're gonna talk again about the love and the difference sort of between Will and Gem, like how Tessa loves them or whatever the relationships. Here's what I wrote this down. I quote, this is something that Tessa says to Will in the cave. Don't you see, Will, you're a person like me. You are like me. You say the things I think, but never say aloud. You read the books I read. You love the poetry I love. You make me laugh with your ridiculous songs and the way you see the truth of everything. I feel like you can look inside me and see other places I am odd or unusual in just the same way. And I'm like, this is why that Will and Tessa are the better pair, is because, you know, they're just, you don't have to have everything in common with your partner. And it's just the way that Tessa sees Will for everything he is. And as we've said, Jem saw Tessa as this idea, and Tessa saw Jem as this broken, even if she won't admit it, this broken person. You can't, the idea of loving someone, the idea where with Jem, this idea of someone who could love him and his first impression.
She loves Will, and she can't bring herself to deny Jem.
Right. But like with Jem, it's the idea of someone who could love him where their first impression was that he wasn't sick. And it's not like the most coherent like way of saying it, but it's the same thing we've all been saying. Like this whole time.
Yeah,
of like,
absolutely.
Of like, Jem loves the idea of Tessa. Whereas Will actually does love Tessa.
It feels like Will knows Tessa better. Knows Tessa deeper. And they've just been put in situations where they've gotten to know each other better. And when we're talking about this, it's not to say that one type of love is superior to another, or that different types of love don't exist. And it's not to say that there's not a universe in which Jem and Tessa could have been together, or that they didn't have any love at all. It's just to say that, like, specifically the way that all of this wrapped up is frustrating. And yeah, it is because Tessa and Will have that one great love. They have found that person who is similar in the ways that matter and are different enough to pull out the best parts of themselves and to cover for the other. You know, like, it is that all-encompassing, this is the other half of myself, you know? And it's just not the same. And it's not the same experience with Jem. It's just not. And we see this reflected through other characters' eyes as well. Like, every time that we see Tessa and Will, especially after their engagement, it's like, yes, Tessa and her fiance. Oh, not this one.
Wolsey Scott, sort of.
You sure about that? Wolsey Scott, go ahead.
I didn't mean to talk over you. I was just going to say, Wolsey Scott sort of hits it on the bullseye, where he's like, you two are in love with each other.
Exactly, and no one's had that.
Wolsey Scott was,
Wolsey Scott is unhinged, but that's neither here nor there.
He is unhinged.
We stand Wolsey Scott.
We do. But it's just, everyone sees how in love Will and Tessa are, but we never see that same experience happen with her and Jem. When they talk about Tessa and Jem, it's always very one-sided. It's like, oh, Jem loves her so much. And it's like, oh, okay. And, like, that's not to say that quieter types of love aren't valid. It's just that, you know, there's no comparison.
Yeah. And just, like, and, like, genre-wise, like, YA, we're looking for the screaming, crying, throwing up type of love, you know?
Exactly.
The hot, the hungry, not the sweet and the innocent.
Which, like, sweet and innocent, I don't know about that, but,
I meant with, like, Jem. Not this, like, if we're comparing them.
I mean, I'm just thinking back to Fierce Midnight, and I'm like...
No. Like, yes. But I mean, like, in comparison.
Yeah, yes. Right.
And additionally, we're in their heads so much. And, like, even the way that Jem, or even the way that Tessa talks about, or thinks about Jem and Will, is entirely different. She thinks about Jem as this thing that she's afraid to break. And she thinks about Will and this thing she wants to break her, you know? It's different.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, you know? Like,
exactly.
Tessa is afraid to hurt Jem in fear that it will kill him, basically.
Exactly.
Right. And they decide not to tell Jem that they're engaged.
You mean Will?
Yes, not to tell Will that they're engaged. Wait. No, they decide not to tell Jem that they're in love because Jem and Tessa are engaged. That was what I was getting at. But yeah, it's because of the not break Jem thing.
And
we've been. Oh, go. You go.
You go ahead. I needed more time to marinate that thought.
Okay. We've just been saying this, you know, throughout this whole series. Every time Tessa is thinking about Jem, she's, you know, or talking to Jem, she's always thinking about Will. And, like, it's just, I don't know how else to put it other than just that, like, it's a different kind of love, which isn't a bad thing. It's just, it's not as captivating,
it's not as
I
powerful
guess.
And moving to us as readers here, like in these books. That
like
these books don't read like Tessa and Jem's story. They read like Will and Tessa's story.
I wrote down that I wanted to, but I wrote down that I wanted to reach through the book and just shake Will and Tessa because I'm like, just freaking admit that you love each other already.
Yeah.
And when they are, it's like Tessa's just like, I just want you to be yourself. Whereas I feel like I guess Will, I don't know if this is the right way of saying it, but I think you guys will know what I mean. Will was always himself when he was with Tessa, even if it was like distant and it was a facade because like he thought he couldn't love anyone, blah blah blah. Whereas Jem, not that Jem wasn't a gentleman, but I feel like he tried extra hard to be this like gentleman and like this perfect guy kind of thing rather than himself.
I understand what you mean. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I'm not sure that it wasn't himself.
But I could add to that. But
yeah.
But he was presenting himself, you know, to be this, but more this idealized version of himself.
Yeah.
Will was raw.
It's more like a polished, perfect version rather than the raw, unfiltered.
Jem was like, look at me.
Right.
He starts like overdosing himself on the infant to be this person who's alive, who's healthy, who's a full person of who Jem considers himself to be, and not this half person that he sees himself as.
Yeah.
And he's less vulnerable around Tessa than Will is. And I think that that's important in the way that Tessa and Will ultimately, know each other on a deeper level than I would argue Jem and Tessa do.
So Jem finds strength in Tessa. Like, Jem thinks that he could, Jem can be strong around Tessa, which is not something that he feels generally, but Will can be weak around Tessa, which is different.
It is different.
It's the strength to be vulnerable.
Yeah. It is.
Oh. Do we want to? So, do we want to get into it, or do we want to talk about other days?
I don't think there's anything. I think we're into it. I think that we are getting into it. I think that this is where we're at.
We're in it.
All right.
So my problem is not with the fact that Will, Jem, and Tessa all love each other. I can get behind that. There are a million ways that we could have resolved this triangle that would have been like, yeah, that's great. But it's just, like, for example, just some ones that I think would work. I think that if Jem had perma died, and it just all been kind of terrible, and then, Will and Tessa just went on, and I feel like, that's life, and that happens sometimes. Maybe that's a little dark and a little unfortunate for a YA story, so I understand why we didn't do that, but I think that that's a more compelling story. Secondly, I think that if, Tessa and Will go on and have this full life, and then Will passes on, as he does, and then we're going to take the fact that Jem became a silent brother, and then gets better again, and then they come together, because obviously they've had these shared experiences that they can then share, and then they grow together and fall in love there afterwards. 110% behind that.
Yeah.
If we're going to establish this as an everyone's alive, everyone's great polycule, where they're all dating each other, I'm also behind that. Which I understand that, when was this book written again? Like 2012?
Yeah, 20.
Hold on, I'll look at the copyright. Go on.
Yeah, so 2010s era, ending something in a polycule is, even ending it the way that this did, and saying that they all loved each other deeply, is very progressive,
It is, yeah.
But it's just, it's dissatisfying, and even going the extra step to have them all be in one happy polycule would have been more satisfying. Because they talk about...
copyright. Pardon? No, go. I was just going to say when the copyright... Go.
What is it?
Text copyright is 2013.
2013, yeah. So, like, obviously, this wasn't as... Like, ending something in polyamory was not the thing that we did back in the ye old days of 10 years ago. But it would have been more satisfying, because the way that there's what we're being shown, and then there's what we're being explicitly told, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we are being shown is that Will and Tessa have this really intense love for one another, and romantically, right? What we're being told is that same intensity of romance exists between the three of them. And I can buy that, like, Will is kind of this bridge between Jem and Tessa, and, like, it's their love for him that brings them together in that way. And I can buy that in the context of, like, all of them together, or in the context of, finding each other in 2008 and then growing in love. But in the context that it exists, where she's engaged to him, and then he gives them permission to go bang Will for a few years until they're married, and he inevitably dies, and then he's gonna come back with the understanding that they're gonna... That, I'm like...
Like...
She
keeps and she continues to wear the jade pendant.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no. I understand keeping it. That I understand. But continuing to wear it when you are literally, like... And, there's the whole thing about the pearl bracelet that Will gives her for their 30th anniversary?
30th anniversary. Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me.
I'm not bothered by that, because each of us is shaped by the people we've been around and the people that we've loved.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if we think back to our past relationships, past friends, we've learned something from those people. And even though we may have had, like, if we just split ways, or we had, like, terrible falling outs, we still, like, carry pieces of them within us. Like, going back from,
right.
Infancy. And I think that this is the way that this is. And I think that because there is that train of love that connects all three of them, right? I think that the jade pendant and the pearl bracelet both symbolize that thread that really, while we're seeing two of them on screen as this formal couple, like, really this relationship is designed in such a way where it's supposed to really be including all three of them. You know?
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't have a problem with her keeping it. I just don't think she should have continued to wear it all those years. That's just me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, that part doesn't bother me. And like, even reading the epilogue, I was like, yeah, and I agree that, because 2008 is many years after Will's death, honestly. So I understand the coming together part, but the way that it was written of, I have loved you all like for a century and a half.
That's
Like,
the issue.
that's the issue
See,
that I have, because it's like it's like we're picking up like nothing. Like the love is the same as when we left it off, and like that's not how that works.
you've
Like
both grown. You both had no experiences. And
yeah.
I wrote this
So I
down.
could see. Go ahead. Sorry.
Jem has never
No,
seen a
no.
flushing toilet. You know, like.
I was just
But
gonna say, I don't know why I thought this, but I was under the impression that like Jem as Zachariah, like doesn't remember his life as Jem. So therefore he wouldn't remember Tessa or Will or anything.
no.
I don't know why I had that impression, but I swear I thought that's what happened.
No. So yeah, they definitely they have memories, but like they shouldn't have the emotions.
Right.
Right,
It's
because I
like
was just
you
like, for
That's
having
some
your
reason I
age
thought
in a
like
blur
that.
filter.
For some reason I thought that like he not right away, but like down the line he like wouldn't recognize Tessa. Like in like the Mortal Instruments timeline of events.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tessa's
Uh,
not around in the Mortal Instruments timeline of events, really.
A little bit. But that's neither here nor there. I just meant that like I thought like he couldn't remember them. But my point being like I even think that would have been more compelling if like he
I agree it would
doesn't
have been more
remember
compelling.
her.
Yeah, if
He
he
doesn't
like
remember them, blah
re-meets her.
blah, and then he gets his memories back, and like you can have this grand reunion, but
Mm-hmm.
even then, like you said, Allie, relearning and re-knowing each other and showing that they sort of fall in love as these new people, rather than the oh I always loved you.
It's much more
Yeah,
satisfying.
because I think that like so I understand the setup of Tessa being an immortal or whatever. Like she has lived a full lifetime basically. She has lived through a marriage and kids and all this stuff, and is back in the States where she's going to basically have to just start that over for loops and loops and loops. And then Jem, leaving Tiny Brothers and having at becoming being what age 18 or 19 something now
19,
20.
yeah.
Yeah. And then Tessa being still looking like she's 19 or whatever. Like I understand them being like, we're now at the same starting point, and then they can do a cycle of life together. So I understand that, but yeah, it's the I have loved you for a century and a half
Yeah,
that
I think
bothers me
that's what
about
we
that,
all
because they
kind
have
of.
both lived full lives and they have these experiences that most people don't have, like so there is some companionship in a similar life stage actually, which is a weird life stage, but
Mm-hmm.
there's that similarity. But yeah, the fact of I've loved you all this time and I still love you, that
Yeah.
is like, eh.
I think that's what it all comes down to for all three of us. It's that we don't have a problem with them reuniting and them sort of falling in love with being in love with each other. It can be a different kind of love than Will and Tessa had. It's the fact that it's immediate, like I never stopped loving you, kind of like.
It's not conveyed or told effectively or compellingly.
Yeah,
And that's the
it's
issue.
too immediate for it to be
So
satisfying.
it's funny because would we believe that if the same thing happened to Will, that his love lasted a century and a half? Probably. Like, I don't know. Like Will, the burning bright passion of Will to be like,
Yeah.
if he comes back and he's like, I have loved you for a century and a half, we'd all be like, oh, Will, he has.
Again, I think it comes back to what I said earlier of Jem sees Tessa as this idea of someone who will love him even though he's dying, kind of thing. Like
I
the
think,
idea of Tessa.
yeah.
I'm not saying it well, but I think you guys get what I mean.
I think that we just don't get enough of Jem and Tessa's actual love on screen. What we get on screen is we get Tessa worried about Jem dying. Tessa worried about breaking Jem's heart. Tessa breaking Will's heart to save Jem's. We get Tessa feeling bad that she's with Jem because Will is so in love with her. Like, that's what we get out of them. We don't feel like... I guess I don't feel like their love came to a satisfying point enough where it was intense enough and it was passionate enough and it was solid enough to have endured, a century and a half to then come together and then be like, oh, yes, everything's fine.
Because, as we've been saying, every time she's with Jem, she's usually thinking about Will.
And I think that was my ultimate opinion when I was younger reading these books, but I also have a new opinion and kind of interesting insight now that I'm an adult. But Tessa, Tessa's lived a full life with a man she was married to, learned all the fun ins and outs of that, being with somebody else. She's raised two children. She's seen them grow up and have grandchildren, She's done this whole life thing. And ultimately, they're still meeting up once a year and they're still, keeping in touch that way. And we see just how much the Silent Brothers rules are bent for Jem, with how often Brother Zechariah is around in the next trilogy. Oh. But, she's a different person than when they fell in love. She's an older person with adult. It feels weird for her to then jump into this new thing. Because she'll have the context that he's changed as well. And Jem may not feel that he's changed because... Yeah.
She says the same thing of, I've loved you this long, too. She's held the flame that long, too. And I'm like, have you? Yeah.
It was not a flame. It was a flicker.
I don't know if this is relevant to this series. I guess it kind of is, because we see it a little bit. It doesn't make sense, almost. Because Jem says, regarding, a cure for being a silent brother, that if he were to no longer be a silent brother, the Yin Fen would basically come back and consume him.
Right.
So, I don't know, maybe it's explained when he's cured, if you will. But, how is he Jem?
But even beyond that, you don't unbecome a silent brother. That's just not a thing.
That's not whatever. Regarding, if we're just taking this trilogy, we know nothing about how Jem no longer is a silent brother. We don't know what happened.
That's true, yeah.
All we get is, it's a tale of another Herondale Lightwood Fairchild group, whatever. So, and I get that it's a, epilogue, it's supposed to, tease us for whatever. But how? How does this happen? It doesn't make sense.
It's just... Deus Ex Machina.
And yeah, the silent brother I want to... They just don't apply to Jem.
Another Deus Ex Machina. Tessa becoming ethereal. Because...
I guess we did talk about that, did we? I'm still being mad about the end.
I'm very but I'm also kind of I'm mixed feelings on that whole plot resolution. Because I'm on the one hand, it's kind of badass that she uses her power and the thing Mortmain wanted the most against him.
Yeah.
If that was the established precedent of how her powers worked. If she had turned into Camille and had an insatiable bloodlust. If we had seen kind of...
We never learn of her being able to... She never tries to compel anyone or have vampire speed or whatever.
Yeah.
On the other hand, as we've been saying, it's a Deus Ex Machina of... Well, that resolved itself quickly.
Exactly.
It's just ethereal speaking through Tessa. It feels like Tessa had nothing to do with it. She was just a vessel.
And also, the angel reached out to her through a dream. For the first time in arguably the how many years that Tessa's had this necklace? Just to be oh yeah, here I am, and here's what I do.
He's meant to protect her, and then he almost kills her because she changed into him.
Well,
but then also
it's because her body can't handle the power.
Right. But then he still protects her anyway because she lives.
Yeah. Well, that dream sequence exists, so that way she will have seen his face and be able to change into him.
I know.
Yeah.
Right. and but that's kind of annoying dream, in and of itself,
many years later.
But I think it's just
convenience.
It's like I said, as we've been saying, it's a Deus Ex Machina of cool, using the power Mortmain wanted most against him. But also, it's not Tessa saying these things, it's ethereal. It's ethereal crushing Mortmain, it's not Tessa.
Right.
That's true.
Which, in fairness, the angel then gets their resolution in destroying their captor.
But does Tessa get the resolution in destroying Mortmain, who arguably destroyed her entire family?
I mean, Tessa's there. Tessa's there.
I see what you're saying about how it's not...
I understand.
It's... The hero doesn't really solve the problem.
It's not satisfying. I don't like it.
It's not.
It's cool. And it's badass.
It's cool, but cool story, bro. But
Exactly.
yeah, and then she falls into the coma again, and the solution is to have Silent Brother Jem come and wake her up.
Like
Have Jem come and give her permission to bang Will.
I do think they needed closure, but like it's the fact that when in her unconscious state, she's calling out for everybody but Will.
Yeah, that's not.
And that makes Will think that she doesn't
like,
love him, that she still loves Jem, and I'm like, oh my god. Like I said, I wanted to reach through the book and shake the two of them and just be like, just kiss already. Just say that you love each other.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't know. I think that I wish that there had been a better way to save Jem if Jem had to be saved. Exactly, because we're bending the rules for him.
And the entire chapter 23 is just like Jem trying to explain why he made the choice he made when like everybody thought he was dead, you know?
It's like it didn't need to be the entire chapter.
Yeah, he's trying to explain why he became a silent brother,
and he doesn't do it well.
He doesn't do it well, and
because like, I thought you didn't want this, and he's like, well, I didn't. Exactly. But
and then he like doesn't answer the question. He like dodges that.
He does it like, yeah.
He's like, yeah, well, I did anyway. Like, okay,
exactly. Like it's, and there's nowhere foreshadowed. I remember a few podcasts ago, it might have been in Clockwork Prince. That's when they were visiting Jesse in the City of Bones, and then Will runs off. Or not Will, I'm sorry. Jem runs off screen for a moment. I was like, oh, he's got to be like talking to the Silent Brothers about like stuff. But no, we find out that he was just like getting like
information on
or whatever. And I was
the Lightwoods.
Yeah.
I was looking so hard for any kind of foreshadowing that this was going to be the thing. Which like
they repeat this. They say that like Jem literally can't be a Silent Brother because of the Yin Fen in his system.
Exactly, and he was like, "Oh, I had them wait until I was like literally dead, so that way enough of it was out of my system."
Like at the last possible second, but there's also still Yin Fen in my body. It's just not enough that it blocks the Silent Brother runes, and it's like.
And we don't. You can have a character change their mind. You can have a character act in a way that is antithetical to the way they've been presented to your audience, but you need to do it. You need to like leave something there. You know, and also, otherwise it's just odd and sloppy writing. Like
all of this happened off screen.
Yeah, exactly. Like
we needed even like one chapter where Jem considers it for a moment. You know.
Yeah, where he's thinking about changing his mind, or like
it's not considering it because of Tessa. It's considering it because he starts maybe this is what I want, not because of a girl or Will or whoever, because it's his decision.
Or even if he does consider it because of Tessa, but it's just on screen in a place that we can see it. Because it hits you like a slap in the face, you know? And, like, foreshadowing is not mandatory, but it's clever and it leads to a satisfying reading experience.
And Cassie Clare can do foreshadowing. We've seen her do it.
Yes.
Exactly. We know that, yeah. Ugh. And, like... there's this part on page, like, 454 or 5, where Cecily, we're in Cecily's head for a minute while she's watching all this happen, and we just get the reveal that it's Brother Zechariah was Jem. And it says she had known. They had all known that Jem had gone to the Silent City to become a Silent Brother or die trying. But that and I was like, who knew that? None of you knew that. You're lying. Like,
in the last group of chapters, Charlotte alludes to the fact that she believes he's dead.
Yeah. Well,
no, who knew that?
No.
As we said, we have very strong opinions, and the strong opinion is that the ending is a giant Deus Ex Machina in a bad way.
It's unfortunate because I love, like, obviously I'm the Resident Will stan. I love these characters. I love this world. I love, like, the first 2 books in the series, and it's just like, ugh. The ending of this trilogy in particular, I don't think I have as much beef with the endings of the others. But this one I was just like, damn, you know? Just,
yeah.
Ugh. Yeah. I wanted better.
Jem spends that whole chapter talking to Tessa about, like, how this happened, and like, and all the permission, like, it's okay that you and Will are in love, and then you banged and all whatever, and then he has to talk to Will and get his closure on this. And like the other thing is, like, I mean, the problem is it's the everybody has to have a happy ending thing, right?
Right.
It's what's going on to some extent.
They don't.
But
that is what's happening.
Don't.
You're right.
Yeah, but they don't. And again, like, realistically in the world, they're not supposed to invite a specific silent brother to come help them on things, and they're not supposed, but just because we can
They like
break the
say it
laws.
that they can't keep summoning him, but yet it feels like they
But
probably
they keep
will.
summoning him for
They
years.
keep summoning him for years. I know that you
They
do not know this yet,
though.
but you don't
Yeah,
understand.
they're gonna keep
Oh, I'm
summoning
sure I'll get
him
that.
for
I can't wait.
years, and it's
Will gets a paper cut, and he's like, "Send for Brother Zechariah."
Yeah,
It is a little ridiculous.
Like, I get
ridiculous.
it. You lost your brother, you lost your parabatai, but you need to move on.
It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, it's not.
I hear you, buddy, but I know that Will does not move on, but
he doesn't.
Yeah, I
and right, but like, it's the amount of rules that get bent for Brother Zechariah specifically.
Which, like,
that
rule
is
bending
not...
is part of the YA genre, but like, there's a limit, you know.
But
It's like, Cassie,
again,
you made these rules.
And
Why
like I said, like we said,
them?
they don't just bend the rules for Zechariah, they bend them assumingly for
Cecily
Will
and
and
Will,
Cecily.
supposedly. Yep, they're like, every rule we're just gonna break the rules at the end here, and whatever.
It's fine now because Charlotte's the console, and like Charlotte's
and
console,
like they were low key bending the rules when Jem and Tessa were getting married, because
yeah, that's true.
There's a rule that you can't marry warlocks, but Tessa's not technically a warlock.
I understand that exception because that would be like a realistic.
I'm not saying that's I'm just saying like that's another example of them bending the rules.
Oh yeah, it is.
Especially for Shadowhunters who are known for being notoriously strict about their rules. It's like,
a law is hard, but it is the law.
Yeah.
Exactly. No laws.
No laws.
None.
Lawless state.
We're done with the laws.
Chaos. Only chaos.
Only chaos. Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else major you guys want to talk about, but I feel I wanted to sort of talk about the theme of this series.
That sounds really close to literary analysis. That's not what I signed up for doing this podcast. What do you mean I gotta think critically about the books?
I am that person. I feel like you know that.
I'm just giving you shit.
Oh, I did want to know though, before you get into big, we finally see Jessie again. So what do you think about that, Jessie?
I was like, hello, Jessie's a ghost. I don't remember this.
No.
Oh.
Well, there's
I will tell you exactly what I hold on.
That poof, right at the end.
I will tell you. Ready? My note exactly. Jessamine appears as a ghost? Hello? I don't remember this.
Yeah.
But I did love the heart to heart between Jessie and Will. I'm glad it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
Will's like, Jessie's like, you never liked me much. And he's like, no, I did. It was the fact that I saw myself in you. And I was like, I'm glad they sort of mended things.
That's good, but I'm a little worried that falls into happy ending. Like, I'm like, that's
I don't know. Is it a happy ending? Because Jessie has to... She has to guard the Institute, and she never wanted to be a Shadowhunter, so is that really a happy ending?
For everyone the only one with a shit ending.
Oh, you're saying Jessie didn't get a happy ending. Okay.
And I guess Eggs Benedict also got an objectively shitty ending, but he also sucked therefore.
Well, that doesn't count. But yeah, for all of everything, for all of chapter 24, making sure everybody has a happy ending, Jessie gets done terribly dirty. I'm like, what do you mean?
She says she's happy. Yeah. She says she's okay with it.
She says she's happy. But it's like Jem being like, I
don't know.
Yeah.
I liked that Will was like, when you are eventually able to enter the Institute, you'll see that your room is untouched, your dolls are still there, because that was the promise he made her, that he would, protect her dolls and all that. I'm like,
oh yeah.
It was sweet.
It was a happy ending for Will. Yeah, it was for Will's happy ending, but it was not for Jessie. She's a plot device for Will to have a happy ending.
Yeah, well.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, that's not fair.
I'm glad to have seen Jessie again to get closure there, but also this isn't what you wanted.
It was about the closure. And I think that's exactly, it's not what you wanted, and we knew that. It's like Jem being like, I don't want to be a silent brother.
She's being punished, and I don't think she deserves to be punished, because she was manipulated just like the rest of them.
I agree. And for all their mercy that they have had about, a lot of things, I don't think that's fair to her. No.
It's hard. I didn't even think about this, but you're so right that it's just she says she's happy, but is she really?
She's like, I'm happy, guys. I'm happy.
I'm happy, guys.
Yeah.
She's like, I will continue to watch over you and protect this institute, because I didn't want to do it when I was alive, and it's like, that doesn't make sense. But okay.
Yikes. It doesn't.
It's just literal hell.
I don't think you included this, but is this a Deus Ex Machina?
No, because I don't think it does anything for the story.
It doesn't solve solve a problem in the story, but
it's closure
for
Deus Ex
Will's
Machina?
closure. Yeah, it's for closure. It's not for Jesse.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and conveniently, Will is the only person who sees her, and she has never appeared as a ghost before this. You know, like that part. I'm like, wow. Yeah. Mad about that.
Yeah.
Mad about that too.
Mad about
I get that.
Yeah. And I forgot that Elias Carstairs shows up at the end.
With Cortana, the sword.
Foreshadowing.
Yep. Foreshadowing.
And the foreshadowing that I know of, I'm like, oh, I guess it's... I wrote this down. I was like, hey, foreshadowing for this character. And then I was like, oh, also maybe Cordelia too. I don't know yet.
Cordelia. Yeah. Cordelia.
Yeah.
I was like, she's a Carstairs, right?
Cordelia.
She is.
It's a Carstairs.
But yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I guess it would be for her too. I'm thinking of another character now.
Cordelia is my dog's name, named after Cordelia Carstairs.
Yeah. She is not like Cordelia Carstairs, but that's okay.
She's not. I mean, she's kind of headstrong now. Like
now she is yelling at us whenever she needs something or she believes she needs something. Yeah.
Should I go and talk about the themes then? Are we all good, or does anybody else? Do you want to have anything else to say, Jenny?
Lead us, fearless leader.
Okay. So if I had to pick a theme for this book and maybe even this series, it would be forgiveness or understanding. Will has to forgive himself for the death of his sister. Cecily has to forgive Will for leaving all those years ago. Jem has to forgive Will and Tessa for being a couple. Will and Tessa have to forgive themselves for basically being...
Banging in the cave.
For banging in the cave.
Will and Tessa sort of have to forgive themselves, even though they don't really, for betraying Jem. I don't know. And understanding in that Will comes to understand the Lightwoods, and they come to understand Will, and Cecily comes to understand why Will did what he did, and they all come to understand each other. And, that's with any characters, but, I really feel like, Tessa comes to understand herself and accept being a warlock. And, I could go on about the little details about it all, but I do think that the overall is forgiveness and understanding.
I can get behind those as being some pretty strong and
forgiveness is pretty strong. Yeah.
Forgiveness. Can you imagine?
You see, this is why Melanie wanted to talk about the themes, because she just wanted to.
That's fine.
No, quite literally, I just thought. I am not kidding you. I just thought about that. But yeah. Listen, I took too many English classes in college. I'm used to literary analysis.
Yeah, I did the English major thing too, but I did not apply it to our fun YA novels. Not all the time. Sometimes I do, but this time I was like, nah, I don't care. I'm too busy being mad.
We all have different takes. We all have different takes.
I have 2 music degrees, and I'm using both of them making this podcast. You're welcome.
Woo!
I have a publishing degree, so I understand the ins and outs of publishing a book. I can kind of maybe apply that to this podcast.
Yeah, I think that forgiveness and understanding.
I mean, if you were
themes, I think there's other things at play. I don't think that I can name them right now specifically. I need more time to kind of
maybe marinate. Change being one of them.
I can tell you that the inevitability of death is not a theme in this book because we said.
Yeah. If I had to pick 2 major ones, it would be forgiveness and understanding.
I can get that. Yeah, I can get behind that.
I said a smart thing.
I'm so proud.
Ooh, good job, Melanie. Good job.
It doesn't happen a lot.
No.
This is not a big brain podcast. This is a big brain podcast. We're trying podcast.
This is we're doing our best podcast.
We share a brain cell.
Yeah, exactly. 3 of us are bouncing the brain cell around between us.
Boing, 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 boing.
It's like a screensaver that bounces off the side of the screen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well,
Oh,
we left it on a note of we finished the Infernal Devices.
We
We finished our first trilogy, guys. The first trilogy of the
exciting.
podcast.
We're not super thrilled with the ending.
But that's fine.
But hopefully it can only go up from here.
That's fair. Only up from here.
Let's
talk about what we're reading next, because it gets a little complicated here.
Because I don't even think I know.
So we're trying to do a rough chronological order for this podcast. But you can't really start on like a side story. And also you want to do each book back to back and wherever. So we're kind of doing in between trilogies these little interludes of some of the short stories. So next one and the one after will both be some shorts interlude. And this time we're reading some of the Bane Chronicles first. We're reading What Really Happened in Peru, because as we all know, Magnus is banned from Peru and can't go there. And we're also, or the Bane Chronicles, for context, obviously follows Magnus Bane and some of his adventures he's had off screen, either before the timeline or like during the timeline and all that fun stuff. So What Really Happened in Peru. Also, The Runaway Queen is the next one, also in the Bane Chronicles. And then Vampires, Scones, and Edmund Herondale. So Edmund Herondale obviously being Will's dad, we're going to see and hear a little bit of from Magnus's eyes. Because he does talk about having met Will's dad in this trilogy. And then finally, because we're going to do 4 short ones, we're going to skip ahead many years, and Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy. Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy is through the eyes of Simon, who is a character in the Mortal Instruments, as he goes to the Shadowhunter Academy, which is, don't worry about it. And then he sort of is learning stories from the history of Shadowhunters and learning these stories of the people who went to the academy before him and all these things. And so the one that we are going to read, we'll focus less on the spoilers of like the Shadowhunter Academy itself and like Simon's thing, but we'll try and focus our discussion on the tale that happens within it. And the one that we're reading is The Whitechapel Fiend. So 4 little short stories to read before 2 weeks from now, December 2nd, I believe. Or no, December 9th. I can count. December 9th. Fun stuff, guys.
Yeah. And I think, like Allie's picked out these stories. They're ones that are gonna either, they're kind of similar to the ones that, like you're saying, like chronologically, gives us some chronology, and it gives us some context of before either like the ending of what we've read or what we're going into, like the before what we're going into. I think a little, right?
Yes.
Some of these are, yeah.
I'm
They just
excited
give
for
us
the
a little
one
bit
after this next one, because we're gonna have some pain with my. I'm a Will Herondale stan, but I have a very close second favorite who we'll meet soon. And yeah.
Yep.
I'm excited to start The Last Hours. I know nothing about it other than there's Cordelia Carstairs.
The babies.
James
I'm very
Herondale.
excited to read them right after
and
these
other
ones.
Me too. I've definitely picked up some
generational
things reading these
characters.
ones where I'm like, feelings.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, catch us.
It'll be really
in 2 weeks.
interesting.
More Brother Zechariah.
Listen, no, it'll be really interesting because you guys have both read this series and I haven't, so it'll be really interesting.
It'll be interesting to get Melanie's first thoughts. Well, we're not there yet. We're doing, remember,
thoughts.
shorts interlude.
Of course.
Oh yeah.
Which I haven't read any of those. I don't know if you guys have read any of the shorts.
I read all of them.
I've read some of them, but I don't know if I've read the ones that we're about to read or not. We'll see.
Have you read the shorts, Melanie?
No.
Oh, okay.
That's what I just said.
I've read everything.
Pay attention, Allie.
It's so hard for me, and like this was a long podcast, guys. We've been here for an hour and 45 minutes, and like, listen, my poor little brain. So yeah,
Indeed.
2 weeks
All I hear
back with some
is
shorts and a shorter podcast because we don't have to be mad about the ending, which. Yeah. But until
you know where
then,
to find us.
You know where to find us.
Yep.
If you're
Discord.
listening to this on afterwards on YouTube or on Spotify or Apple Music or Apple Podcast or whatever you listen to your podcasts, then we are also streaming on Twitch live, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
We have a Discord. We have an Instagram that we haven't posted on in a while because we've been away.
We?
But yes, collectively.
Okay. Sure, I guess a majority means that.
Listen.
Anyway.
I was like, I have no idea what to post. It's Thanksgiving. I got nothing.
I'm not riling you up on podcast. Anyway, but follow us on Instagram where we may or may not post pictures.
We'll hopefully be back at it soon. That's all I can say.
No more Rona.
Yeah.
Stay well.
Yeah. Stay well. Stay healthy. Stay reading. And we'll catch you next time.
Stay healthy, stay reading. I like it. See you next time.
Bye. Bye.
Jenny, say bye.
Bye.